Well, hi everyone. My name's Dale, and I'm a program manager in Windows. And I have a really fun job at Microsoft because I get to work on a lot of different technologies with a lot of different companies. And one of my jobs is to help partners and developers to get their apps to UWP. Now, you've learned a lot already today, and your brains are probably already full. And now I have the challenge of putting some more stuff into your brains. But I'm going to take it easy on you, because what we're going to do today is really quite simple. We're going to take something that already exists, your existing Win32 app. We're going to use some tools, and we're going to get your existing Win32 app. Except the app will now be a UWP app. No changes to your code, nothing. We're just going to take your existing installer or your existing binaries, and we're going to convert the Win32 app to a UWP app. And that's going to start you on the journey to UWP. And so we're going to have some really fascinating demos where we're going to take something and make it the same thing, but a little different. And I want to encourage you to try this when you have a chance, because you'll find that these tools are pretty easy to use, and you feel pretty good because you took something, you did a little bit of work, and you got something new. So let's dive into this. Now, we started releasing Desktop Bridge applications in the Windows Store on September the 19th of last year. And we started with about 18 apps. And now, 9 months later, we have over 1,000 UWP apps in the Windows Store. These are developers that took the Desktop Bridge tools and converted their apps and got them into the Windows Store. And it's accelerating. Every day, there are new Desktop Bridge apps being submitted to the store and being available to Windows 10 users worldwide. So, you're probably wondering, what is the Desktop Bridge? Have any of you ever heard of Centennial or Project Centennial? Project Centennial is now called Desktop Bridge, and it's basically the same thing with more features now. And I'm actually going to read this to you because this is what we need to understand, and I have a terrible memory. The Desktop Bridge consists of a set of technologies that help bring existing Win32 apps and games to the Universal Windows platform. The Desktop Bridge creates a trusted UWP application package, we call them AppXs, from your existing Win32 installer, binaries, or source code. Now notice this last sentence, from your existing Win32 installer or binaries. That implies there's no code changes. The Desktop Bridge can convert your existing installer, existing binaries, to a UWP app. You can also use a Desktop Bridge to work with your original source code. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of the Desktop Bridge. And one of the things is simplified and trusted deployment. Now this has two sides to it. There's the side of your users, and of course, your side as a developer. Let's look at users first of all, and what they need to do to be able to install your Win32 app. First of all, if they just heard about your app and they want to try and install it, they might search for it on the internet, and they might be referred to a different URL than what your company's URL is. And they're going to download and install that, and they may be asked during that process for elevated privileges. And that means basically you're giving the installer access to your entire machine, and that installer might be installing adware or other things. I mean, how many of you are happy when an installer asks for elevated privileges? So one thing, by having a UWP app, and having it in the Windows Store, the customer is able to go to a known location for all Windows apps and be able to download that onto their machine. Now let's look at also from the side of the developer and some of the challenges that you face. Over the past 30 years, we've really given you no guidance on how to write an installer, except basically do no harm. And when you think about it, what your installer might do, it writes things to the system registry, it writes things to the system 32 folder, you're writing DLLs there, and you've basically modified the user's system. And now, when the user wants to uninstall your app, Your uninstaller is responsible for moving those things. But sometimes we forget registry settings. Sometimes we remove DLLs from the system folder that other apps might be using. So it's very difficult for you as a developer to create an uninstaller that completely uninstalls to the system. And the other thing is, as we add entries to the registry, that starts to slow down the machine. Over time, as users install more and more apps on their machine, the computer starts up more slowly, apps start up more slowly because the registry grows. Well, with the UWP app and with the desktop bridge, we actually help you solve that problem. Greater reach and easier monetization. Well, it's a store. We help you distribute your app to a wide variety of markets, and that has a lot of benefits. Oh, and I'm kind of passing over store in this talk because Tony in the next talk is going to be talking more about the store. Now, finally, modernizing your app. So we can use the desktop bridge to change your app into UWP app, so it's exactly the same app with exactly the same number of features. But if your application is now running on Windows 10, there are techniques that you can use to add some of these exciting new UWP features that you're learning about today to your app. Your existing Win32 app will still continue to run as is on Windows 7 or whatever platforms your users are using. But if it's running on Windows 10, you can light it up and add exciting new features. Now, there's a number of packaging options now. When we first released the desktop bridge, there was the command line tool, the desktop app converter, and I'm going to demonstrate that for you in a little bit. But now that you have more options to do the conversion process, you can use Visual Studio 2017. And actually, if you come to the workshop tomorrow, we're going to go quite into depth with a series of exercises where you'll be setting up Visual Studio 2017 to take an existing Win32 project and make it into a UWP application. And also, if your build system is using some of these existing third-party installers, and if you use Wix, for example, FireGiant is a plugin to Wix, these now, with a few configuration settings, will spit out an AppX as well as your existing Win32 installer. So you don't have to change your build system to be able to generate an AppX. So as you can see, this is the desktop app converter. It's a command line tool, and it's very simple to use, and I'm going to actually show you in a minute how it works. But what it does is it spits out a certificate and an AppX. And you're probably wondering, what is an AppX? Well, we're going to open one in a little bit, but really, it's a zip file. And inside there are all the files needed that the Windows 10 operating system needs to be able to install, run your application, and uninstall your application. And this is an example, and I'm going to go through this really quickly because we're going to talk about it a lot tomorrow, is a Visual Studio 2017 project. And I'm saying 2017 because you really need 2017 to do this. But you can take your initial project file, and you can add two other project files, a debug file project and a packaging project. And what these two projects allow you to do is to be able to debug your code. So say, for example, you run the desktop app converter and something's wrong. Well, you can set up Visual Studio to be able to debug your UWP version to find out what the issue is. And you can also use a packaging project that will package your Win32 application into an AppX. And it really makes it quite easy. You just right-click on the packaging project, click Store, click Create App Package, and it bundles everything up that can then be submitted directly to the store or side-loaded onto a user's computer. So let's look at the desktop app converter really quickly. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at a script that is going to run the desktop app converter. And a couple interesting things about the desktop app converter. You install it from the Windows Store, and it's actually a Windows Store application that was created by itself. So it's a command line tool that used itself to package itself to the Windows Store. And so you install that from the Windows Store, and what we're going to do is we're just going to run it really quickly. And now what's happening is the desktop app converter is creating a container on your system. And inside that container, it's putting a clean install of Windows 10. It's then copying your installer and running your installer inside this clean environment because it wants to learn what it's doing to the system. If your installer is writing to the registry, it's going to pick that up. If it's copying DLLs to the system folder, it's going to pick that up too. And once it's run the installer, it's going to perform an analysis of what happened. What were the changes that were made by your installer? And then it's going to remove some things, and it's going to assign your AppX, and then it's going to create the AppX. And so now what we'll do is we'll take a look at what's inside the AppX. So the AppX is here, and if we double-click on this, we can install it onto the machine. Now notice there's no installer. Windows 10 is now the installer. There's enough information inside the AppX package for it to be able to install your Win32 application. So we can launch it, and you'll see it's a very simple application. But this application actually has two features in it that are not allowed in a UWP application. One, this application writes to the registry. So if I enter my flight information and save it, it gets saved to the registry. And if I click on export, it's going to write a file to the desktop directly without interacting with the user. These two simple features are not allowed in a full UWP app. You have to do it a little differently. But we haven't changed a single line of code, and this UWP app is working completely. But you heard me say earlier, but wait a minute. Oh, before we do this, let's just look at how easy it is for the user to uninstall. And now the app is gone. So when the desktop app converter works on your application, it actually creates two new a new folder called VFS, Virtual File System. And that's if you've written anything to the system folder, and now gets written to the VFS folder. And likewise, if you read and write to the registry, you're no longer writing to the system registry and making it bigger and bigger and bigger. You're writing to your own private copy of the registry, which is this registry.dat file. And so now when your application gets uninstalled, the VFS folder gets deleted. You're the only ones using those DLLs and files in there, so you're not going to break any other application. And the registry.dat file gets removed, so we haven't made the registry bloated. So the Windows 10 computer remains quite performant because it's not being slowed down by the registry. The other thing that it gets created, is this app manifest file. And this app manifest file is kind of the key to describing to Windows 10 what your application is and does. And all UWP apps have this manifest file. And this is where, when you want to start adding new features to your application using the desktop bridge, you're going to add them to this file. But really what's in this file is this run full trust. When I defined a desktop bridge application earlier, I told you that it was a trusted UWP application. Now, because, like as I mentioned, a traditional UWP app can't call registry calls, can't write to the desktop. But this app that we just saw is a UWP app, and it can do those things. And the reason why it can do those things is because it's a trusted app. So it has extra permissions that allow it to do things so you didn't have to change your code. Now, the one thing to consider about this is when you submit your desktop bridge application to the Windows Store, there will be some extra review because they want to make sure that you're doing no evil, because we're giving you access to more of the operating system than a regular UWP app. And so here you specify on the application tag that where your exe is, and also if we look over here, you can see we're running as a full trust application. The other thing is we're specifying over here that for the target device family name, instead of windows.universal, we're saying windows.desktop. And this is one thing to keep in mind about the desktop bridge. When you convert your Win32 app, using the desktop bridge into the UWP app, it will only run on Windows desktop. It won't run on Xbox or HoloLens or other devices because those devices require a full UWP app. So this is the start of your journey. This gets your existing app converted so it can run on desktop, but then you're going to have to do more work to make it into a full UWP application. Okay, so let's continue on now with the slides. Okay, as I mentioned, once you've converted your Win32 app into UWP app, you can publish it to the store. You can sideload it onto machine, as what I demonstrated earlier by installing the AppX, and you can also submit it to the Windows Store for Business. Now, the other thing that to keep in mind is we just released a new Windows laptop that runs Windows 10 S. And the important thing to keep in mind about Windows 10 S is it only runs UWP applications. So if you want to be able to have your application, your existing application, run on Windows 10 S, you do need to do this conversion process to convert it to a UWP. Through the Windows Store, of course, you get access to a wide variety of markets. You can add store APIs for monetization. And here's an example of a very successful application, Win32 application that was published to the Windows Store last September. And since that time, they've had millions of downloads by users. Users were coming to the store, searching for their application, not finding it. And so they put their app in the store. And this is a very complicated app. It's a media player, entertainment hub. And inside of it is actually embedded Python 2.7. And Python 2.7 is used to parse the Python code of all the add-ons. And there are thousands and thousands of add-ons for Kodi. And they all just work because now that it's been converted with Desktop Bridge, all the existing code continued to work and all their features continue to work. So it's been a very successful app in the store. Another one that's been very successful is Photoscape X Pro. They did the initial conversion, but they went one step further. They added the monetization APIs of Windows 10 so that they could have a trial version, and once that trial version expires, the user would have the option to upgrade and purchase new features. And they were really happy with how this just handled the upgrade and the purchasing of add-ons globally for them. Okay, so we've done the initial conversion. Our existing app now works. We can put it in the store, and we can now look at adding new features. So the Desktop Bridge packages your existing app for Windows 10, and usually with little or no changes to your code. Now, the process of packaging your app gives us what's called a package identity. And as I mentioned earlier, it also gives it an application manifest. And because you have these two things, you now have access to a vast array of Windows 10 APIs. And one company, Cakewalk Sonar, which is a really awesome audio creation tool, added a lot of Windows 10 APIs to their application so that they were, when they ran on Windows 10, their users were able to access Windows 10 APIs like Bluetooth, MIDI, and inking. But when they were running on Windows 7, the app ran exactly as it is without changes. So they were very successful in creating an application that could run on both Windows 10 and Windows 7 and take advantage of the new features. Let's look quickly at a few examples of modernizing an app. Okay, so one thing we have in Windows 10 is the ability to share data between applications. It's called a share contract. And a traditional Win32 application cannot connect to this share contract because it's not a Windows 10 application. So what we did is we took an existing WPF photo editing application, we bundled it with the Desktop Bridge, but we also added another application, a UWP application inside of it. So now in our application package, we actually have two applications. We have a WPF and we have a UWPF. Well, the UWPF can connect to the share contract and be able to receive images from sharing apps. Now we're actually looking right now at the Windows UWP photo app, And we can right-click here and click on Share, and we can share to our WPF app. So now our WPF app didn't appear. Our UWP app appeared because it understands the share contract. And now the user has this image, and if we click on Share, the image is now been shared to our WP application. So this is how we start to add Windows 10 features to our app by inserting UWP APIs as needed or a UWP app as needed that can communicate with the Windows 10 operating system and then be able to feed that information back to our existing application. So that's an example of adding a Windows 10 feature to an existing app. Now, the other one we're going to look at briefly is the hack checklist. Who here is going to the hack tomorrow, the workshop tomorrow? Cool. Who here has run the hack checklist application? Awesome. Now, the hack checklist is in the Windows Store. So if you haven't run it yet, please go to the Windows Store and run the hack checklist. It'll save you so much time tomorrow because this app checks your Windows 10 system for all the required software. So when you come tomorrow, you can actually work on the workshops and not install Visual Studio. So this hack checklist is a UWP application created with the desktop bridge. It's a UWP app because we took this tour all around the world and we wanted to be able to distribute this app easily to all the participants. And we didn't want to have them download something and ask them for administrative rights to install an app on their system. We wanted something that demonstrated what we're talking about here at the conference. So this hack checklist app is a UWP app, but it has to do things like read your registry and do some snooping around to make sure that all these different features are installed on your computer. So for that, we had to run some older Win32 code. And we used an app service, which is a fancy word for a named pipe that allows the two applications to communicate together. So if I run the hack checklist, as soon as I click, so this is the UWP app with a beautiful XAML UI, and as soon as I click Check Now, it's running the Win32 code as a background task, and it's reporting that this computer is ready for the hack. So this is an example sort of progressing further down now where we've taken our UI, made it a full UWP application, but we had some existing Win32 code that we weren't ready to port yet to UWP. So we were able to use that existing code in our UWP app, and we were able to publish it to the Windows Store. Now at Build this year, we announced some great new features. And the important thing to remember is these features aren't things that we think are cool. They're things that developers using the desktop bridge needed. And so all of these features came from feedback from you guys. So more shell extensions, what does that mean? Well, basically, there are 16 million Win32 apps out there, and they all have special needs. Like if you double-click on your file type, you want it to launch your app. Well, these shell extensions allow you to specify what your requirements are and how you relate to the operating system. So for example, if your app has custom fonts that can be available to other apps, you can add an extension to the manifest that describes just that. You can declare firewall rules. You can actually implement a comm server now with these extensions. We also announced, and I'm going to show tomorrow, better integration with Visual Studio. And also, you can run your Desktop Bridge app through the Windows App Certification Kit to make sure it meets the requirements of the store. So what's my call to action? These tools are really simple to use, so give it a try. If you have an existing app and you want to see what it's like to become a UWP app, run the Desktop App Converter. If that works for you and you want to continue down the path, get your source code into Visual 2017 and start debugging and building it and adding UWP features. But most importantly, if you give these tools a try, please give us feedback. If you find something that doesn't work, we want to know so we can help you. Thanks, you've been a great audience, and it's been really fun talking with you.